Why does Charizard get 2 Mega Forms while other fan favorites get 0? The answer reveals Game Freak's entire approach to Mega Evolution balance. Some Pokémon received gorgeous redesigns that photograph beautifully, but crumble in actual battles, boring upgrades that completely dominate competitive play. We're ranking every Mega across 7 levels of power, and each level exposes more about how Pokémon's developers prioritize marketing appeal over competitive viability. The results explain why Mega Evolution remains so controversial today. The disappointments, cool design, trash stats. Level 1 contains the Pokémon that break your heart the hardest. Game Freak's art team went absolutely wild, creating visual masterpieces that look like they belong in a museum. But the moment you try using them in battle, you realize these stunning designs hide terrible competitive stats. Mega Glalie represents this tragedy perfectly. The design team transformed a simple ice ball into a nightmarish creature with a massive crystalline jaw that could freeze your soul. Its icy fangs and menacing aura scream power and destruction. You see this thing and think it's going to demolish everything in its path with brutal ice attacks. But then you actually use Mega Glalie in battle and discover the harsh truth. This terrifying ice demon has the battle presence of soggy cardboard. Its stats get distributed in the most wasteful way possible, leaving it too slow to outspeed threats and too weak to knock out anything meaningful. The 100 stat boost rule becomes a cruel joke when those extra points get scattered across useless areas instead of fixing what Glalie actually needed. Mega Aerodactyl suffers from the exact same curse. The prehistoric rock pterodactyl looks absolutely incredible, with its enhanced wings and ancient power radiating from every surface. You can see the design team's passion in every detail of this fossilized predator brought back to terrifying life. Yet using Mega Aerodactyl feels completely pointless. It performs almost exactly the same role as regular Aerodactyl, just with slightly bigger numbers that don't actually change any important matchups. The Mega Evolution adds visual flair without adding any meaningful gameplay improvements. It's like putting racing stripes on a car that still drives the same speed. The pattern becomes obvious once you start looking for it. Game Freak's marketing team clearly requested the most photogenic Pokémon possible for promotional materials and merchandise sales. These designs work perfectly for posters, trading cards, and toy lines because they grab attention instantly. Mega Gyarados demonstrates how this priority system creates beautiful disappointments. The mythological sea serpent design draws inspiration from ancient legends of massive water dragons that could destroy entire coastlines. Its enhanced fins and more serpentine body create one of the most striking silhouettes in the entire franchise. But competitive players quickly learned that Mega Gyarados brings almost nothing new to actual battles. Its stat spread and move pool changes fail to address any of Gyarados' existing problems while creating new weaknesses that make it harder to use effectively. Even Mega Blastoise falls into this visual first trap. Those massive shoulder cannons and additional artillery pieces make it look like a walking battle fortress ready to level cities. The design screams raw destructive power and defensive might that should dominate any battlefield. The reality hits differently though. Mega Blastoise remains the weakest of all the Kanto starter Megas, despite sporting the most impressive weaponry. Its stat distribution prioritizes the wrong areas, and its ability fails to synergize with its role, creating another gorgeous failure. The 100 stat boost rule starts feeling like a limitation rather than a benefit when applied to these visual masterpieces. Game Freak allocated those precious stat points based on maintaining design themes rather than creating competitively viable Pokémon. The result proves that looking incredible and being incredible operate on completely separate development tracks. These Pokémon photograph beautifully but battle terribly, exposing Game Freak's true priorities in the Mega Evolution project. The questionable upgrades. Was this really necessary? Level 2 houses the Pokémon that make you question Game Freak's entire decision-making process. These were already powerhouse Pokémon dominating competitive battles before Mega Evolution even existed. But apparently that wasn't enough for the developers, who decided these perfectly functional monsters needed upgrades nobody asked for. Garchomp was already a pseudo-legendary terror that competitive players feared and respected. Its stats were nearly perfect. Its move pool covered every situation, and its speed let it outpace most threats while delivering devastating dragon and ground attacks. This thing was the definition of balanced power that didn't need any help whatsoever. So naturally, Game Freak decided to give it a Mega Evolution that trades away its signature speed for even more attack power. Mega Garchomp drops from 102 speed down to 92. which means it gets outsped by Pokemon that regular Garchomp could easily handle. The boost to special attack from 80 to 120 feels completely pointless since Garchomp rarely uses special moves anyway. It's like taking a perfectly tuned sports car and turning it into a slow tank. Sure, the tank hits harder, but you've completely destroyed what made the sports car appealing in the first place. Regular Garchomp with a Choice Scarf or Life Orb often performs better than its Mega form because it keeps the speed that made it dangerous. Mega Tyranitar presents a different but equally puzzling problem. The Sandstorm King gets a Mega form that looks almost identical to its base form and performs the exact same battlefield role. The attack boost from 134 to 164 and the defensive improvements are nice, but they don't fundamentally change how you use this Pokemon. Regular Tyranitar with an Assault Vest or Choice Band can be just as effective without sacrificing the Mega slot for your team. The Mega evolution feels like adding slightly bigger numbers to a Pokemon that was already doing its job perfectly well. You're not getting a new strategy or expanded toolkit, just the same Pokemon with marginally better stats. Mega Ampharos showcases another form of questionable upgrading. The Dragon typing edition sounds exciting on paper, until you realize its move pool remains painfully narrow for a Dragon type. The special attack boost from 115 to 165 is impressive, but the speed actually decreases from 55 to 45, making it even slower than before. Dragon typing should open up new offensive possibilities, but Mega Ampharos can't access enough Dragon moves to really capitalize on this change. You end up with a Pokemon that gained a new type but can't effectively use it, creating more of a gimmick than a genuine improvement. These upgrades reveal Game Freak's strange approach to the 100 stat boost formula. Instead of identifying Pokemon that needed help, they seem to pick popular favorites and give them Mega forms regardless of necessity. The extra stats get distributed without considering whether they actually improve the Pokemon's competitive viability. Regular Garchomp, Tyranitar, and Ampharos often outperform their Mega forms in actual battles because they can hold useful items and don't waste their stat boosts in counterproductive ways. The Mega evolution becomes a downgrade disguised as an upgrade. Sometimes the best Pokemon don't need fixing, and these Megas prove that more power doesn't always equal better design. You end up with solutions desperately searching for problems that never existed in the first place. The Glass Cannons, high risk, higher therapy bills. Level 3 contains the Pokemon that make every battle feel like defusing a bomb with tweezers. Game Freak discovered they could create Mega Pokemon that hit harder than a meteor strike, but somehow forgot these glass weapons needed to survive long enough to actually attack something. Mega Beedrill transforms from the franchise's biggest joke into a legitimate speed demon that can delete opponents from existence. Its attack shoots up to 150 while its speed reaches 145. Turning this former weakling into a legitimate threat that can outpace and eliminate most Pokemon in a single hit. The transformation feels almost miraculous when you see those offensive numbers. But then reality hits you like a truck. Mega Beedrill's defense stays at a pathetic 40, meaning any decent physical attack will instantly vaporize it before it gets a chance to move. Its special defense of 80 provides slightly more cushion, but not enough to survive most special attacks either. You're essentially piloting a rocket launcher made of glass that explodes if someone looks at it wrong. Using Mega Beedrill becomes the ultimate high-stakes gambling session, where every turn feels like Russian roulette. You need to predict your opponent's moves perfectly because one wrong switch or mistimed attack means your glass cannon becomes expensive debris. The margin for error doesn't exist when you're working with defense stats that belong in the reject pile. Mega Blaziken brings incredible sweeping potential with its 160 attack and respectable 100 speed that gets boosted by Speed Boost each turn. This combination should make it an unstoppable force that accelerates into game-ending territory with each knockout it scores. The offensive potential looks absolutely terrifying on paper. Yet every battle with Mega Blaziken turns into a nerve-wracking dance around potential one-hit knockouts. Both its defense and special defense cap out at 80, which means any super effective attack or powerful neutral hit can end its sweep before it really gets started. You're constantly calculating damage ranges and praying your opponent doesn't have the perfect counter ready. Mega Alakazam pushes this glass cannon concept to its absolute breaking point. Its special attack reaches a monstrous 175 while its speed hits 150. Creating a psychic powerhouse that can demolish entire teams if given the opportunity. The raw numbers suggest this thing should be able to sweep through anything stupid enough to stand in its way. But its defense of 65 means even weak physical attacks can crumple it instantly. The special defense of 105 provides some protection, but not nearly enough when you're facing the powerful special attackers that populate competitive play. You're wielding a psychic nuke that detonates if someone sneezes too loudly nearby. The 100 stat boost gets allocated entirely into offense for these Pokémon, creating beautiful but fragile weapons that require surgical precision to use effectively. Nearly 300 of Mega Beedrill's total stats go straight into attack and speed, leaving everything else as an afterthought that becomes a critical weakness. Playing with glass cannons demands the strategic patience of a chess grandmaster combined with the steady nerves of someone diffusing explosives. Every move requires careful calculation because you can't afford to take hits that other Pokémon would shrug off easily. These Megas prove that raw offensive power becomes meaningless if you can't stay on the battlefield long enough to use it. The most devastating attack statistics in the world won't save you when a stiff breeze can knock you out before you get a turn. The solid mid-tiers. Perfectly adequate and perfectly boring. Level 4 houses the Pokémon that make you shrug and say, yeah, that's fine, I guess. Not every Mega Evolution needs to shatter the competitive scene or completely disappoint everyone who uses it. Some just exist in that comfortable middle ground where they do their job without making anyone particularly excited or upset about it. Mega Pidgeot brings reliable utility with its no-guard ability that guarantees every attack connects. Hurricane normally has only 70% accuracy, making no-guard incredibly valuable for ensuring it never misses. The ability also works both ways, so opponents can't miss their attacks against you either. It's like getting a guarantee that removes uncertainty from both sides of the battle. But reliable utility doesn't generate excitement or fear when your opponent sees it on the team preview screen. Nobody panics when they spot Mega Pidgeot because they know exactly what it's going to do. It'll probably use Tailwind to boost your team's speed, maybe throw out some decently powered special attacks, and potentially U-turn out when things get dicey. Predictable but functional. These are the Megas you pick when you need something dependable rather than something that will steal the spotlight or generate highlight reel moments. Mega Pidgeot fills the role of supportive team player that enables other Pokémon to succeed without demanding center stage for itself. It's the Pokémon equivalent of a reliable coworker who always gets their tasks done on time. Mega Skyzer demonstrates this perfectly adequate approach through its technician ability combined with sensibly distributed stat increases. The attack boost from 130 to 150 pairs nicely with technician's power increase for weaker moves, creating meaningful damage output that threatens opponents without overwhelming them. The defense increase from 100 to 140 provides extra bulk that helps it stick around longer. The result feels more like a gentle upgrade than a dramatic transformation. Regular Scyther was already good, and Mega Scyther is slightly better at doing the same things. It's useful but uninspiring, like upgrading from a decent smartphone to a slightly newer model of the same phone. Mega Manectric offers solid speed and electric typing combined with Intimidate utility that lowers opponents' attack stats when it switches in. The speed boost lets it outpace threats, while Volt Switch allows it to repeatedly trigger Intimidate by switching in and out. This creates a defensive strategy that weakens physical attackers over time. However, its move pool remains notably restricted beyond Volt Switch, Flamethrower, and Hidden Power Ice. You're working with a limited toolkit that makes battles feel somewhat linear and predictable. The strategy works but doesn't offer much variety or creative potential. The 100 stat boost gets spread around sensibly for these Pokémon, creating balanced but unremarkable stat profiles. Mega Pidgeot reaches baseline stats around 80 in most areas, with notable improvements to speed and special attack. This distribution avoids glaring weaknesses, while also avoiding standout strengths that would push it into higher tiers. Sometimes being perfectly adequate is exactly what a team composition needs, even if it doesn't make for exciting gameplay footage or impressive battle stories. These Pokémon provide stable foundations that let other team members take risks and attempt flashy plays. The mid-tier Megas prove that not every evolution needs to be a dramatic reinvention to have legitimate value in competitive play. Steady reliability has its own strategic merit. The specialized threats, One Trick. Ponies that actually work. Level 5 contains the Pokemon that mastered the art of doing one thing exceptionally well instead of being average at everything. Game Freak discovered that laser-focused specialization creates monsters that absolutely dominate when their specific conditions align perfectly, even if they struggle outside their narrow comfort zones. Mega Mawile looks deceptively harmless, with its tiny fairy appearance and cute steel jaws. But this innocent facade hides one of the most devastating wall breakers in competitive Pokemon. The huge power ability effectively doubles its attack stat, pushing it to a ridiculous 210 that surpasses even legendary Pokemon. This astronomical offensive power transforms every attack into a sledgehammer that can punch holes through the bulkiest defensive walls in the game. The Steel and Fairy typing provides 9 resistances and 2 immunities, making Mega Mawile exceptionally difficult to switch into safely. Opponents face an impossible choice between eating a massive hit or switching to something that might get demolished anyway. This tiny fairy becomes a one-Pokemon wrecking crew that forces opponents to completely rebuild their defensive strategies. The specialization approach means these Megas excel dramatically in specific situations while becoming liabilities when conditions don't favor them. It's like having a Formula 1 race car that dominates on smooth tracks but becomes useless the moment you hit rough terrain. Mega Swampert demonstrates this principle through its transformation on rain teams. The Swift Swim ability doubles its speed when rain is active, turning this normally slow mudfish into a lightning-fast sweeper that combines 150 attack with newfound speed. When the weather aligns perfectly, Mega Swampert becomes nearly unbeatable as it outpaces threats while delivering devastating water and ground attacks. The water and ground typing offers crucial resistances that help rain teams handle electric attacks aimed at countering water types. Its natural bulk allows it to tank hits while setting up or attacking, creating a nearly perfect storm of offense and durability when rain conditions persist. Mega Aggron takes the complete opposite approach through pure defensive specialization. The type change from Rock and Steel to Pure Steel eliminates 2 major weaknesses, while the Filter ability reduces super effective damage from the usual double damage down to 1.5 times normal damage. Its defense reaches an astronomical 230, creating an immovable steel fortress that laughs at physical attacks. This focused defensive approach transforms Mega Aggron into a wall that can tank hits other Pokemon couldn't dream of surviving. The massive defense investment combined with decent special defense and respectable attack creates a Pokemon that shuts down entire offensive strategies through sheer durability. The 100 stat boost gets laser-focused into specific roles rather than spread around generically for these specialized threats. Mega Mawile puts everything into attack power. Mega Swampert emphasizes speed and rain, and Mega Aggron maximizes defensive bulk. This focused allocation creates extreme strengths that define their battlefield roles completely. One-trick ponies prove that mastering a single strategy completely often works better than being mediocre at everything. These Pokemon don't try to cover all their bases or fix every weakness. Instead, they double down on what makes them unique and become absolutely dominant within their specializations. These specialized threats show how Mega Evolution works best when it amplifies existing strengths rather than trying to patch up weaknesses. The most effective Megas take what already worked and push it to ridiculous extremes that reshape entire team compositions around their capabilities. The Meta Definers. These actually changed competitive play. Level 6 houses the Pokemon that didn't just join competitive play, they completely rewrote how battles work at the most fundamental level. These Megas forced every player to throw out their existing knowledge and rebuild their understanding of Pokemon from scratch. Mega Kangaskhan's Parental Bond ability breaks the basic math that governs every Pokemon battle. This seemingly simple ability makes every single attack hit twice. The first hit deals full damage, while the second hit deals half damage in Generation 6, later nerfed to a quarter in Generation 7. Still, this demolishes the entire foundation of damage calculations and turns normal attacks into devastating combinations. The 2-hit mechanic forces players to recalculate everything they thought they knew about offensive pressure. Body Slam gets 2 chances to paralyze your opponent. Crunch gets 2 opportunities to lower their defense. Power-Up Punch becomes completely broken because it boosts attack twice, while dealing damage with both hits. Focus Sash, the item that normally guarantees survival against any single attack, becomes completely useless against Mega Kangaskhan. The first hit breaks the sash, then the second hit knocks out the Pokémon anyway. This interaction alone reshapes item choices across the entire metagame, because one of the most reliable defensive tools stops working. Even Fake Out becomes a nightmare move when Parental Bond doubles its damage output. The math behind turn-by-turn decision-making gets completely scrambled when you can't rely on standard damage calculations or defensive items to function properly. Mega Gengar creates a different kind of battlefield control through Shadow Tag, which traps opponents and prevents them from switching out. No more safe switches or strategic retreats when this ghostly prison warden enters the battle. You're locked into whatever Pokémon is currently on the field, forced to fight or watch it get eliminated. This trapping mechanic removes the safety net that defines Pokémon's strategic depth. The ability to switch Pokémon creates the tactical flexibility that makes battles interesting, but Shadow Tag eliminates that option entirely. Players must suddenly account for being locked into unfavorable matchups with no escape route available. Team building becomes exponentially more complex when you need to prepare for potential trap situations. Every Pokémon on your roster needs to handle Mega Gengar directly, rather than relying on switching as a defensive option. Mega Salamence demonstrates how ability combinations can create dual threat systems that dominate multiple aspects of battle simultaneously. Intimidate lowers opponents' attack stats when it switches in, softening incoming physical damage. Meanwhile, Moxie boosts its own attack with each knockout, promising momentum-building sweeps that become unstoppable. The defensive utility of Intimidate combines with the offensive snowball potential of Moxie to create a Pokémon that threatens opponents from multiple angles. Physical attackers struggle against the attack reduction, while the threat of Moxie boosts forces desperate plays to prevent sweeps. These abilities transcend the simple 100 stat boost formula by changing core game mechanics rather than just increasing numbers. The right ability proves more powerful than any amount of raw statistical improvements because it alters fundamental rules about how battles function. Meta-defining Megas forced competitive players to completely rebuild their teams and strategies around new mechanical realities. The Pokémon that succeeded in this tier didn't just get stronger. They made existing strategies obsolete and created entirely new ways to approach battles. The absolute broken monsters. Game Freak's balance team was asleep. Level 7 contains the Pokémon that broke competitive play so completely they needed their own special ban categories. At this tier, Game Freak apparently fired their entire balance team and let the interns design whatever they wanted without any adult supervision. Mega Rayquaza doesn't even need a Mega Stone to evolve. It just decides to become overpowered whenever it learns Dragon Ascent, which frees up its held item slot for even more broken strategies. Every other Mega Evolution requires sacrificing your held item, but Rayquaza gets to keep both the Mega Boost and whatever game-breaking item it wants to hold. This Sky Serpent became so ridiculously overpowered it got banned from the ban list itself. The competitive community had to create the Anything Goes tier just to contain this monstrosity because even Ubers wasn't broken enough to handle it. Getting banned from the tier designed for banned Pokémon is like getting kicked out of detention for being too disruptive. The Dragon Ascent evolution method reveals Game Freak's complete abandonment of their own Mega Evolution rules. They established that Mega Stones were required for transformation, then immediately threw that system out the window when they wanted to create the most broken Pokémon possible. It's like establishing speed limits, then giving one driver permission to ignore them entirely. Mega Rayquaza's Delta Stream ability eliminates flying-type weaknesses completely. Ice, rock, and electric attacks that should demolish flying types suddenly deal neutral damage instead. The ability doesn't just provide resistances, it rewrites type effectiveness charts to make this thing nearly impossible to counter with traditional methods. Mewtwo received not one but two broken forms because apparently one unstoppable psychic legend wasn't enough. Mega Mewtwo X gets the highest base attack stat of any Pokémon at 190. Turning it into a physical destruction machine with fighting typing. Mega Mewtwo Y boasts the highest base special attack at 194, creating a special sweeper that vaporizes anything foolish enough to switch in. Both forms demonstrate how legendary Pokémon plus Mega Evolution creates competitive chaos that no amount of strategy can realistically contain. They each reach 780 base stat total. putting them among the most powerful Pokémon ever created while maintaining movesets that cover every possible weakness. And then there's Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre, which aren't even Mega Evolutions at all. They use Primal Reversion, a completely separate mechanic that takes the concept of broken to even more absurd heights. Primal Groudon's Desolate Land doesn't just boost fire moves, it completely prevents water attacks from working at all. Primal Kyogre's Primordial Sea returns the favor by making fire-type moves completely useless. These weather effects don't reduce damage or provide resistances, they straight-up delete entire types from affecting these Pokémon. You can't counter Primal Groudon with water moves, because water moves stop existing when it's on the field. The abilities rewrite fundamental game mechanics to ensure these legends have no reliable counters. These monsters prove that the 100 stat boost was never the real limitation on Mega Evolution power levels. Abilities, typings, and special mechanics write the true power ceiling, and Game Freak decided to ignore that ceiling entirely when designing these abominations. The Broken Tier shows what happens when Game Freak stops pretending to care about competitive balance and just creates Pokémon designed to be unstoppable forces of nature that laugh at traditional counters. The real lesson behind Mega Evolution's power divide. The 7 levels reveal Game Freak's development priorities clearly. Visual design sells games and merchandise, but mechanical balance determines which Pokémon actually survive in competitive play long-term. Marketing teams wanted photogenic monsters for promotional materials, while balance teams got ignored completely. Legends ZA promises new Megas for Dragonite, Victreebel, and Holucha, giving Game Freak another opportunity to learn from their previous mistakes. The hope remains these additions receive the Kangaskhan treatment of game-changing abilities rather than the Glalie disappointment of wasted potential. Will they create more broken monsters or beautiful failures?